Genesis, when Satan was tempting Eve to eat the apple, and he was a snake, and God was upset with him and said that all serpents will not have legs anymore, they'll crawl on their bellies. Well, Satan isn't normally a snake. He just takes any form he wants. So
I'm going to extrapolate a little bit. The fact that God judged serpents, because God doesn't talk about Satan, he talks about the serpent. And what does he say about the serpent?
I say not the serpent.
What does the Bible say about the serpent? That it was the most subtle of all the creatures in the world. Now, I'm sure that it is not including in that list who? Satan technically isn't a creature in the world. He does not occupy our plane of existence.
like lizards or animals that do have legs.
No, who is excluded from this being the most subtle creature of the
Sheep.
No, sheep aren't very subtle at all. They are
Dumb
as a block.
I meant the opposite. I don't know why. I meant it's the opposite.
You mean like insects?
Yes, insects, when you go, who are the smartest animals in the world? Insects pop immediately to your
Ants.
mind. Ants, how do ants rate on the intelligence scale? They have instinct, but are they subtle? Do they have the ability? Dogs have way more than ants. Ants just follow their programming. Dogs can choose. But are dogs the most intelligent, the most subtle, the most able to make choices animal in the world?
Dolphins?
Define how you mean subtle. Because I always thought subtle was kind of cool, kind of.
It can be, but in the general is.
You weren't showing your cards in a card game. You were very.
But that
Reserved.
implies, in order to be subtle, you have to have a massive level of intelligence. So what animal?
That you have a strategy that nobody can.
Right. What animal is exempted when it says the serpent was the most subtle? What's the one being of this world that's being exempted? That's right in front of your eyes.
Human beings?
Nope. I'm sorry?
Human beings?
Yes. So he's not counting humans in that because they are over the natural order. But of all the animals, the non-human entities that live in this world, the serpent was the most intelligent. And what do we know about animals, at least those in the garden? What do we know about them? Perhaps. What else? What else? And now you're getting closer to it. What else? We have tame animals today. I do not believe the animals in the garden were tame.
But did they eat each other? You know, that's.
It's heavy than.
Yeah. Because again, this describes all the animals of the garden.
Trying to think of a.
What was their role?
They were under man's.
What was their role? It's right there in Genesis. It's right there in Genesis 2. So if you're not in Genesis 2, you're probably not going to see it. And this is again where I'm saying when we study the Bible, we've got to stop and go, okay, what's it really saying here? What was the role of the animals in the garden?
Did it ever address, I don't
To be a help.
All the plants of the field
do we know they're vegetarian?
at that point, yes.
To help Adam.
What's the verse?
20.
Verse 20. What does verse 20 say?
So the man gave names to all the livestock, the birds of the sky, and all the wild animals, but for Adam no suitable helper was found
So what was their role?
to help man.
Helper. That's more than tamed animal. They were helpers.
Are you talking about like Snow White and the
Maintain.
animals that were helping her make the dress?
I would say at least that level, yes.
I get that, Pastor. I just don't, reading that, it just doesn't,
That they are helpers. They are not just wild animals running around the forest. They are there specifically to help him. Now, Watchman Nee, taking from that, made the claim. He said, so therefore we can assume if they were to help him, that man has some ability to do what?
Communicate.
To communicate with the animals.
They'll cut the grass over there.
How do we confirm that from scripture? In Genesis 3, what happens? What happens in Genesis 3 to confirm that?
Well, the serpent talked to the woman.
The serpent talks to the woman.
And she doesn't freak out.
She doesn't go, oh, animals don't talk. She doesn't go, wow, I need to get out of here. This is insane. The animal talks to her, and what happens?
She listens.
I don't believe that.
He spoke, right?
The donkey spoke.
That was an exception.
Because, and here's what Watchman Nee said. Now remember, Watchman Nee comes to Christ in China. And he came to Christ in China when China had less than 1 million Christians out of maybe 500 million Chinese. So they are a vastly overwhelmed minority. And what does he have to deal with to present the gospel to Chinese people?
Totally.
Not just total ignorance, but they have been acclimated to the shamans. This is pre-Mao. Mao comes to power and kills him. The pre-Mao China, which is ruled by the religions of China, Shintoism, Confucianism, Buddhism. And what does he see happening with these practitioners of those religions? People who are able to sleep on beds of nails. People who can lift up huge pots of fiery coals.
Walk through.
Between their forearms, while their forearms are branded with symbols. And they can do this without pain. People who can walk across live coals. And if he's going to present that the gospel is the answer, not these people, what does he need? He needs an explanation for how can these people do these things. There's a great book. I would highly recommend it. Watchman Nee, The Latent Power of the Soul. Watchman Nee, The Latent Power of the Soul. And he talks about what was humanity and the animals like pre-fall. And he says all of those things that you see aberrations of now were common, were universal pre-fall. You ever heard the story about, a mother, the car catches fire, the mother grabs the door, tears it right off the side of the car. I had a friend, his name was Don, what was his last name? Boy, it's been 50 years. His father was a construction worker, just local, had his own little business. He was digging a trench across the yard for someone with a backhoe. And he had his assistant down in there as he's digging, making sure that it's secure and everything. And when the backhoe comes up and the guy jumps down to check stuff, the pin in the backhoe bucket broke and slammed down on top of it. The backhoe bucket weighed 400 pounds. His father jumped off the backhoe, jumped into the thing, grabbed the thing, and hurled it 40 feet, 400 pounds. It took 4 men to drag it back from where he threw it. In the process, he destroyed his back and was never without pain for the rest of his life. Where do you get that? And of course, people will say adrenaline. Why can't I do that just on a daily basis? There are people that will talk about precognition, deja vu. I've never been someplace, but when I get there, I recognize it. Kathy was praying years ago, and in the middle of the prayer, she goes, and dear Father, I pray for airline pilots right now. I go, honey, this was late at night. You're falling asleep. Time to go to bed. We're going to close out the prayer. And she goes, nope, we need to pray for airline pilots. Okay. We wake up the next morning and guess what? That was the very time that Russian fighter was shooting down the Japanese airliner with 400 people on board in the 1980s. Claimed they crossed over into Russian airspace, blew them out of the sky. How do you explain all these things? Now, you can talk about demon power, and some of them may be, but Watchman Nee had a different approach. He said, what if those were all abilities that humanity had previous to the fall? That humanity had the ability of telepathy. They could read minds. They had the ability to speak to animals. They had the ability to have bursts of superhuman strength. What do we know about humanity before the fall that changed with the fall? What change came to humanity because of the fall?
Well, they couldn't live forever.
That had to till
But there's a more immediate one. Immediately happened to them. Yes, they died spiritually, but what else? What was their punishment?
till the earth.
Tilling the earth was hard, and women had trouble with giving.
What was, you're not giving man's, what was man's, you've given women's now, trouble and trials by the sweat of their brow. What is that saying? From now on, gardening, tilling the earth is going to cause sweat. It's going to be hard work. What was humanity's job previous to the fall?
What, the earth tilled itself?
To garden in the garden.
10.
And what did it not do previous to that?
It wasn't
Didn't
difficult.
make them sweat. So it was easy work. Now it becomes hard. Was that the garden changed? Or was it the human body changed? So Watchman Nee put this all together. It's called the latent power of the soul. And he said humanity had all these, what we would call superhuman abilities pre-fall. Because God's gifts are irrevocable. God didn't take away those gifts.
Doesn't man only use like 7% of his brain?
That's
That's,
an old,
that's,
yeah, that's an old
that's fictional. They've already proven that you use all of your brain. You just
brain, just at different times.
Yeah.
But
The less hair a man has, the smarter he is. I know that.
Thanks a lot.
so what he said was God didn't take them away. God put them into a place where we cannot normally get them. They were shunted off to a part of our mind, our being, where we don't access them easily. And these Shaolin monks and these other people that practice meditation, what they're doing is tapping into. And how do they do that? How do these shamans tap into these superhuman abilities?
Drugs.
And what do they do in meditation?
You know, that
Internally, what do they do?
Don't they breathe in things?
They practice breathing techniques and things. And what does that do? It alters literally their brain functioning. It allows them to dip down into functions in the brain that we almost never do. Sometimes we do it in sleep, but it's never something that we do automatically or very, very rarely. If we are in a high stress situation, sometimes we get into that brainwave pattern. And what he said is that brainwave pattern that they simulate through meditation is approaching, it's not there, but it's approaching closer to the level they had in the Garden of Eden. And so they're unlocking the edges of those powers that humanity had in full in the garden.
You know, when something traumatic happens, you do one of two things. You can either panic and die, or you can focus in. Maybe that's what they were able to do, that they can focus that part of the mind. Are you telling me that the psychics and all use that, or that's more than?
Maybe, although most of the time that's more
Faked.
demonic or faked, and obviously a lot of it is faked. But this offers a third rail of explaining some of these supernatural events. He went on to say it's not just because it's natural doesn't mean that it is something we should seek, because God took them away deliberately. Can you imagine imperfect people? What would it be like to have telepathy, to be able to read other people's minds?
Scary.
No, if people were perfect, like
If-
there was no sin,
If everybody was perfect, what would it be like?
it'd be very convenient. You want
Yeah, it would be a wonderful thing.
Another way of talking.
With human beings who are sinful, what would it be?
Disasters.
Can you imagine if some of these politicians today could read people's minds with all the stuff they're doing without it? Can you imagine what people like Stalin or Hitler or some of the guys that we're grooming right now in America? would do with that power?
It'd be like Minority.
Yeah, it would be utterly unsafe to be a person. Your thoughts could be used against you. And as sinful people, do we have control of our thoughts? That's Romans 7. The good that I do.
I don't want.
And where does that good and bad come from? But it comes from our thoughts
So
first. Before we do the act,
you think it's.
we have the thought. That's why Jesus said, you've heard it say, don't. But I say,
If you thought about it.
don't lust. What's lust to adultery?
Preamble.
It's the thought versus the action.
So this is like the minority report, where you're arresting people for having the pre-thought
Right.
before they actually commit the crime.
And if we could, if you knew what other people thought of you in their worst moments,
I don't see where there would be. I don't see where there.
yeah,
You'd
it
want to
would be
live by yourself.
horrendous.
Yeah.
Because in our worst moments, we are wicked. And what do we train children to do from the godly people? What do we train them to do? What's childhood all about?
Think before you speak.
And what is that an example of? Censoring ourselves. You can have those thoughts,
But don't say.
but you need to
Keep it in.
deny them. That's why Jesus says, if you would follow me, you must. See? So he said it's dangerous to seek these powers because they were given to perfect people. They're not fit for imperfect people. Now, if that's the case, and I can't prove it beyond what I've given you today, that would mean that this serpent had some kind of intelligence way beyond what animals today show. Was it human level intelligence? Probably not. But was it far more than the dog who wags his tail and licks you? And was it beyond even, have you seen these dogs that will run up? I watched one ran over to the refrigerator. The guy gave a command, ran over to the refrigerator, pulled the refrigerator door open, reached in, got a can, put it in his mouth, ran back and handed the person the can.
Good dog.
Yeah, I've seen it where they grab certain toys and hand them to the guy.
Yeah. That's amazing for a dog. That's, the top 1%, 1/10 of 1% of dogs. But what if all dogs could
That's a
do
cheap
even more
serpent.
than that? What if the dogs could talk back? Would you like the blue can or the red can?
That's your cook.
Yeah. Do you want some ice in there? Isn't that what it's talking about when Genesis says they were a helper?
I always assumed that helper was like a horse that was pulling the plow.
Because that's what we're,
Conditions.
That's what we're
conditioned
used
to. But the fact that if a horse talks to you, even if it's Mr. Ed, you look around for the candid camera,
Yeah.
right? You don't go, ooh, my horse talks, cool.
But what if we still stick with she's used to the serpent speaking? And when the donkey's speaking,
Much different.
the purpose of the donkey speaking, when your mom slapped you across the side of the head, she didn't mean to physically hurt you. She meant you to take you out of the state of mind that you were in and get your attention and to say, listen to me. And that donkey was.
But remember, when is the donkey speaking?
He's
After-
saying, listen to me, you're
after
not
he
paying
was
attention to, what's going on here.
But he's speaking after the fall. And it's Does Balaam go, oh, okay, my donkey's speaking to me, you know, it's a Tuesday.
No, he never.
But Eve says, oh, the serpent's speaking to me, it's a Tuesday.
Yeah, but if the serpent's always been speaking.
But now you're saying just the serpent.
If it is just the serpent,
Why would it be just the serpent if all the animals that he named were to be helpful, helpmeets? Why would only one of them be able to speak?
Let's see.
Yeah.
Because it says, yeah. So
So I'm saying that means that he had some level of intelligence. That idea of subtle presupposes that he had choosing ability. Why does Satan choose the serpent? Because he had some level of soul choice. I'm not saying spirit choice, soul choice, that he could agree to cooperate with Satan. That's my theory.
Oh, so you don't think that Satan came on earth and converted himself into a snake?
No.
He possessed the
Yep.
snake like he did with
But again, when the demons possess the pigs,
they talked.
they didn't speak.
Yeah, they.
Yeah, they
well,
did.
the demon, but it says the demon spoke. So I don't know. But the bottom line is that this was something the people didn't go, okay, the pigs are talking, that's normal.
Maybe they didn't hear him talk, but just Jesus. That's the other thing too.
So I'm just saying that it seems that things were happening in the Garden of Eden way beyond what. And if you go into Isaiah 66 and Revelation 20, what do we have? What do we have in Revelation?
You just said that's it.
Isaiah 66 and Revelation 20, what do we have happen? Isaiah 14, what's that big verse? No. Oh, yeah. I think it's 14. Yeah. Oh, no, that's not 14. Go to,
66 is Israel's future.
Is that thing on?
Yes.
that fan is on. The air conditioning is not
Why
working.
isn't that?
Because you wouldn't hear each other.
Yeah, that's what's very loud. I'm sorry, 65. It's right before 66.
Maybe we should buy a pipe.
Or maybe we fix the air conditioning.
Yeah. In 65, it goes into 66. What's the end of 65?
The new heaven and the new earth.
But what is it? What's happening?
Wolf and the lamb feeding together.
Oh, the wolf and the lamb will feed together. The lion will eat straw.
Millennial kingdom.
It'll come
We're
back.
talking about the kingdom here.
Yeah.
And Isaiah 11, sorry, 11:6 is the other one. That's almost parallel to that, but it's a little different.
Isaiah, you said?
Isaiah 11. Six.
Okay, so we're talking about the animals being tamed.
But it's more than tame. What does it say?
Well, a little child will,
A little child will lead them. The nature that they now have will not be the same nature that they have then. And what is the millennial kingdom?
like a reset back to Eden.
Yeah, the millennial kingdom is the reset to Eden. The millennial kingdom is what Eden should have been. How long did Eden last? How long did Eden last? Why?
Yeah, Adam and Eve didn't have any kids.
What had God commanded them?
Be fruitful and multiply.
Be fruitful and multiply. What were humanity in the Garden of Eden until the fall? They were obedient. What was the sin that cast them from the Garden of Eden? Disobedience. Eating the fruit. It wasn't some chemical in the fruit that turned them evil. It was the act of the fruit. What was the act of the fruit?
Eating.
Disobedience. So did they disobey previous to eating the fruit?
No.
No. What had God commanded them?
Do not eat the.
That. What else?
Go forth.
Yeah, be fruitful and multiply. So therefore, had they been in the garden for a long period of time, there would have been children born before the fall. Now, I'm not saying, you asked, do we know? I'm not telling you it was 6 months or 1 year or 3 months or I don't know how, but it certainly wasn't
10 years.
10 years or 50 years or 100 years. Because had it been some significant amount of time, they would have had children. Because what were they? Why would they have had children?
They would have been told the fruit.
Because they were told to do that. And they were living in obedience.
She couldn't have been pregnant at the time. Because then.
That's going beyond what we can.
I was gonna say, then the child might have come out.
But-
Because the seed, the man's seed would have not had sin in it.
So the bottom line is, what is the kingdom? It is what Eden should have been.
But there's
How long is the kingdom?
1,000 years.
At least 1,000 years. Right. Why do we say at least 1,000 years? Because if it's literal, it's 1,000 years. What's the other interpretation of 1,000 years? A long time. But could it be 200 years and be called the millennial kingdom?
No.
A symbol can never be greater than the thing it shows. So if the millennial kingdom is called 1,000-year reign, that's the minimum. If it's longer than that, then the number is symbolic and it's saying the biggest number we know. Either one, it's a very long time.
Plus we know
What are
that-
other examples of that principle?
Forgive. Heaven comes.
Perhaps. But that's an earthly thing that, another one would be hell. What is hell?
eternity?
But what is hell?
The separation from God.
What is hell? It is described in pretty exacting detail.
God.
Nope, never says that. It says the exact opposite of that because Revelation 14 says they will be punished forever, day and night, in the presence of the holy angels and of the Lamb.
Eternal fire.
Eternal fire. The coals are spread over them, the coals are spread under them, and they burn forever. Now, what are the two ways you can interpret that?
Figuratively, realistic, figuratively and realistic.
Figuratively or literally. I know lots of unsaved people that say, well, I think hell is figurative.
Well, when you start burning.
It very well may be. But is that a comforting thought?
No.
No.
Why?
it's-
Because one of two things is true. Either it is literal fire. What is the only other interpretation?
It's something that we can't comprehend.
It's not just still something unbearable.
It's something we can't comprehend like heaven.
It is something we cannot comprehend that is so bad that there is no way to describe it except to say it is burning alive forever. Is there anything more painful than being burned alive?
No. No.
So if either it is being burned alive, and that's this level, or what's the other possibility?
It's worse.
It's up beyond the ceiling. But the only thing that you could use to describe it is being burned alive.
It's something they can comprehend.
It's something, and we can comprehend
So best case scenario, you're burned alive
forever.
forever. Worst case, it's something you can't comprehend.
And that is so much worse that the only way to describe it is this ultimate human pain.
What I understand, you have the main gate, and at the back of the city, you had the gate where all the trash went out. And there were the low lights who had the job of just an eternal flame. That you were just burning all the stuff that was coming out of the refuse.
I got my,
Every city knew, every inhabitant of every city knew what it was like when the wind was blowing the wrong way. And all that.
I got my haircut today, as you can tell. And she looked at me and she goes, "What were you doing?" And I go, "I don't know what." She goes, your hair is all singed in the front. Were you like cooking and the grill flamed up or something? I said, "No, I haven't cooked on the grill." I said, "Oh, I was up at Mom's Saturday. I was burning all of her paper garbage. It was a hot day like today, and that fire was,
Singed.
and just being around that fire was horrifying. It wasn't burning me. But to be burned alive is the worst. What's the other one? Paul, you mentioned it.
Heaven,
Heaven. There's two choices about heaven.
It's literal or.
Then it's literally golden streets and all that stuff. And people will say that. But what is, in my opinion, if you go to 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse, what is it?
what no eye has
Seen, 9, I think it is.
I think it has to be better.
Yeah.
So again, yeah, it's 2:9, 1 Corinthians 2:9. What is, the one choice is heaven is, golden streets and pearly gates and all this. Well, what's the other choice?
It's something we can't comprehend.
This is what we think is just, an ideal situation.
Inconceivable.
And where is real heaven really?
Inconceivable.
If that's this level,
Way above.
Inconceivable beauty.
40,000 feet where the airplanes fly.
I don't understand how pearls and gold sound that exciting.
Richard Owen Roberts, who was 80 something the last time, 88, I think, the last time I heard him speak. He said, I used to talk about the golden streets of heaven. He goes, the older I get, gold gets pretty slippery. I'm not so sure I like golden streets these days. Now, maybe they have non-slip gold in heaven, but
I mean, I understand you're using whatever terms you have.
To define
So-
something you haven't seen. Yeah.
in the same way, I think Eden falls into that category. It is something that we cannot analogize to earthly life. It is something we have never experienced, cannot experience. So anything that's said about Eden or the millennial kingdom, which is the new Eden, is at this level. I think the real thing is going to be up there someplace.
I think you have to point that whole thing. I think even when people think about heaven, think about themselves floating around in a cloud, they say, boy, that could be.
Oh, like playing a harp on a
Yeah.
cloud.
Like, and that's not.
And I'm not wild about harp music. I don't know about you, but harp music is good for about 10 minutes and then give me something different.
There you go. But, yeah, I think it's gonna be, I think when we get there, we're gonna go.
I mean, we don't even know what it, like, if we were in Eden now, like, we didn't have the fall, we don't know what bushes or trees or the sky or anything would look like, because it's all deteriorating now. It probably would have been different then.
So again, when you look at Eden, when you look at the kingdom, you have to look at it through this lens of anything it's saying is words that we can understand in this world, not the reality. And that's why I say it causes me no hardship to think that the animals could talk to humans and humans could talk back.
Coming again to verse. Genesis 2,
20. And why was there no animal? If animals had all these abilities, why was there no animal suitable for Adam?
All animals. Hey,
Because no matter how high you raise the animals, guess what?
Man, still above.
Man's still up here.
He was made in God's image, not
Yeah.
animal.
And what's the difference? What does it mean that humanity was made in God's image? This is an important one. We
Well,
only got a
God,
couple minutes.
not will intellect.
God breathed in the man and breathed in the dirt and it became man, and everything else he spoke.
But what's the difference categorically between humanity and animals?
Man is God conscious.
Animals have two parts. What are the two parts?
Body and soul.
Body and soul. We know what the body is. What is the soul?
Decision making,
Intellect.
What did you say?
decision making.
It's the ability to choose. Can dogs choose?
Yes.
Anybody ever had a dog?
Yep.
Ever had a dog that it knew it was wrong to poop, but it got angry at you, and what did it do? Pooped on your bed. Was that a choice?
Yes.
Did it, or you slapped its mouth, or however you punish your dog for chewing on something, and it gets mad at you again, and what will it do? Chew on something. My son's fiance, the dog attacks her shoes. If she takes off one of her shoes, the dog attacks it. Never attacks David's shoe. Why is that?
He's afraid of David.
David's gonna get.
Because the dog was David's dog.
Oh,
And what is she now? Competition. And so he will not touch David's shoes. While I was down there, he destroyed, I think, 3 different, always one, not 2 of the same kind, one of each.
smart dog.
Is that choice?
Yeah.
And any animals, cats are worse than dogs. Come here, kitty, kitty, kitty. And what will the cat do?
Go the other way.
Look at you and go, I'm out of here. But what is missing from animals? I don't care if it's one of the so-called primates that are near, quote unquote, near human intelligence.
Spirit.
What is missing? What is spirit? Put it in practical terms.
Eternal being.
An eternal apprehension of reality. What is the difference between every great ape and humanity? If you go back and you're digging up a graveyard, let's say, And great apes will,
Humans bury their dead. They have a concept of.
and what will they do with their dead?
Humans do. Bury.
Save the.
They'll not just bury them.
Born them.
They'll put something in with them to take to the next life.
How about the pharaohs and all the things they put in with?
Their pyramids with all their treasures. Why is that? Elephant graveyards. There are elephant graveyards where they go to die.
Yeah.
But guess what is not in an elephant graveyard? Anything to take them to the next life. Great ape. Dying places where they go to die. You'll find great ape bones. But guess what you never find? Items that were buried with them to take to the next one.
Did you say that about spirit again? What did you?
Spirit is a consciousness of eternity. Eternal consciousness of something beyond the earthly plane. Now that includes, but it is not limited to what your answer. What was your answer? A God conscience, but that is part of that, but it is not the whole of that. It's not just that I'm conscious of God, it's I'm conscious of God and everything else on that dimension. Demons, hell, heaven, rewards, the afterlife, eternity. So it goes beyond the God conscious. Do you see the difference in that? And where's the verse for that?
Is it in Solomon did?
Yeah, it's Solomon, you betcha.
Ecclesiastes
It's in Ecclesiastes.
3:11. Taking a shot.
It is. It is 11.
All right.
Hey, Jack, what's the line go?
He has also set eternity
In the heart now.
in the hearts of men. That's the spirit.
Now, there's animals that go to a common grave.
Mhm.
There are animals that bury their own.
Mhm.
No, they just go and fall.
So,
Like a cat going with litter box.
so are there animals in heaven?
Yes,
How do we know that?
we know they're horses because.
Yeah, but that,
Maybe it's walking.
There are horses. But do animals today have an expectation of going to heaven? No.
Do you think when that any animal that was around Jesus knew that it was Jesus?
I think so.
I mean,
Who knows?
Central inspection.
like how about that donkey that he rode was tame? And most donkeys would, the bull would try to kick him off, but he just rode it.
But didn't Mary ride on a donkey?
Mhm.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
Maybe.
that was one that.
What is there a donkey in the Christmas story?
I don't know.
The answer is
No.
no. How did Mary get from all the way from Nazareth,
Are we?
85 or 100 miles down to Jerusalem?
100% sure one way.
We have no idea. What is the most probable way that she got there?
Walked.
Maybe there was an
While she
animal
was pregnant.
while she was pregnant. Talk to Bob Meyer sometime about being in Vietnam.
The girls have the baby in the rice paddy.
The woman would be out in the rice paddy, bending over, picking, go, sit down, have the child, wash off the child, throw them in the papoose on their back and go back to working in the rice paddy.
My mom was 8.5 months pregnant and she was toe-nailing the second floor of the house I grew up in. We have pictures of her sitting there with a hammer in the neck, 8.5 months pregnant.
We have a woman in my home area, Aline York. She's now probably going for 90, late 80s at least. She was a ballet teacher. And the day before she delivered her second child, she was demonstrating ballet moves and teaching ballet class, including doing splits.
Oh,
She had the baby and she was back to teaching the next day or the day after that. People expected a lot more of their bodies in those days than they do today. And we expect more than it used to be. When my wife and I had Janet, we took Lamaze classes, and the girl that taught the class brought in the hospital bill from her mother when her grandmother, when her mother was born. 10 days in the hospital for a normal delivery. 10 days.
Juicy, 5.
No, 10. That was standard. 10 days.
My mom did. 5.
Well, but that would have been a little younger. Yeah. This would have been back in the 30s, probably. 10 days. You know what the cost was? $1 a day.
Dollar?
Was
Was that
that-
just for a baby or was that? for
Yeah.
other-
For the room, for the board,
That's
for
it.
the medicine,
everything.
for the doctor. $1 a day. God bless everybody. Have a great week. We will not have Bible study next week.
Hey, 2 things, Pastor, and
Yep.
you just went over this, but
Happy
whatever
night,
reason,
everyone.
about spirit.
See ya.
Bye.
You said
Bye.
consciousness